presentations, but I really do want to get to our presentations from our Medical Reserve Corps. They're a fantastic group of volunteers for Schaumburg that help out in a variety of events, emergency management. If there was ever a disaster, they'd be our go-to volunteers, and they do a great presentation on multiple things. So I believe, Mr. Tracy, you are starting with some power outages.
Thank you. So again, welcome. Let's get started. Beautiful day out today, isn't it? Wonderful. And then what happens? You gotta wait for it. There's one more. Kind of a shock, huh? It can happen. And guess what happens after the shock? No lights. So what do we do now?
Turn the generator on.
Well, we'll get to that. This is a
Oh no!
Oh no, what happens now? Well, we're going to talk about this PowerPoint is related to if you do not have a generator. So we got to deal with that first. So let's talk about that first, okay? You will learn today causes of power outages. You will learn to prepare for an outage, and you'll stay safe during an outage, and how to stay safe after an outage. Pretty good. And about 50% of large power outages are caused by severe weather, which we've talked about for the hour and a half. Yeah, we did. U.S. has more power outages than any other developed country. And this is from U.S. Popular Science. And the reason why is our power grid has been out there for a long time, 1880s. And most of today's grid was constructed in the 50s and 60s, and the grid life expectancy is 50 years. So you can see things are just deteriorating, and we're trying to replace it, and what happens then? So we're right in the middle of replacing it, and it's going to take a long time. And the one thing you don't want to see is your newspaper saying this. February 18, 2022, Texas power grid was second or minutes away from total blackout that could have lasted for months. This is a true story. So when you actually think about it, those are the headlines you don't want to read, okay? Now, we're talking about large power outages are rare in Schaumburg because of what? We bury our cables. One of the good things that we had. Now, some old residents, and I'm an old resident too, do you remember years ago before they buried the cables, how many power outages did we have? Every week.
Every time there's a lightning strike.
Yeah, you can't even talk to your neighbor because we're all looking at what we're going to do with our food, you know, and anything else. So this presentation is to help you prepare should there be a large area-wide outage. And we're going to talk about the causes, so it's not just lightning. Okay, we got a little question for everybody. And I have Frank over there going to give me some answers. How many power outages are affecting customers in Northern Illinois right now? Does anybody have a guess? Just take a guess. None? Okay, we'll give you none. Anybody else? I need two more people. 100?
Remember your answers.
I need one more. 10, 0, and 100. All right. Please don't look at your phone right this minute because Frank is going to do it for us. But there's an app on Commonwealth Edison that tells you how many outages. And when Frank gives you the number, I'll show you how it looks. Frank, let me just give you the app, how it looks. So Frank, what's our number? This is the current outages right this second.
As we speak. This is hard to believe. There's only 13 active outages in the area, which is mostly Cook County, Joliet, as far as almost Dixon. So there's 13 actual active outages, and it just changed. Oh my goodness. It just instantly changed. There's 8 outages, and only 55 affected customers. But ComEd wants you to know that there's 4,056,581.
Right here. Right here.
581 that still have their electric. So who said?
10. We had a person back there with 10.
Who was closest to 8?
8. She was back there.
Oh, how you doing? Right here. Oh, you get 2.
And then when you read this, when you get a chance, you can see it says 2, 4, and 2, and there's 9, and this is the 9th one, I believe. So this is very current. It is very current. Very good. Okay, do you mind if I go on, please? The 100 is a little much, so we're going to move on. But it does give you time to think about it. It happens this minute.
Who was furthest from me?
Who was there was 100 back there, Frank. There's 100 back there.
I was thinking people affected.
That's all right. That's okay. We're fine with that. Just go to your app store and load it up, and you'll be fine.
Win either way.
Oh, awesome.
And then who said,
What?
What's the difference between number of outages and number of
Yeah.
people? What does that mean?
They just give you how many people are affected. We're just talking about outages in general. That's what we're talking about here. I like to get a prize too. I like prizes. How about you guys? All right, do you mind if I move on? I'm not trying to rush anybody.
you feel better?
Hey, I got a prize. This is a very good book. This is a very good book. So let's move on.
Northwest suburban Schaumburg was hit pretty hard today. Chopper flew over the
2017,
scene of flooded
close to home.
streets and other areas with trees blown over that smashed into homes. Power is out for thousands across our area.
So it does happen. We are not immune to anything. So the 8 common causes of outages is for sure wind, heat, and ice and snow. You know about the wind, 60-mile-an-hour winds we had 2 weeks ago, less than 3-4 weeks ago at the most. The heat is the burnout type things that happen in the summer. And the ice and snow you can see. Now, the only thing we don't have is a lot of power lines up. But we're not immune to any of that stuff. It could happen. So don't think it's not going to happen to you. It's just a matter, we're Schaumburg, we're kind of insulated from that. And rightfully so, it's good. But it can happen, power outages for sure. Vehicles hitting telephone poles. Now, this could be ice. It could be someone driving crazy. Who knows? But it can collision with utility poles, ground stations can cause outages that last for hours. And you've heard that all the time, okay? Trees, of course, high wind, tree trimming by untrained workers, falling limbs can contact and break power lines. If you go outside of Schaumburg, maybe Hoffman Estates, maybe some other town, they're always trimming trees. So there are always things that are happening. You might not be living at your house, you might be at someone else's house, and that's where it can happen. That's what you got to think of. It's not just around here. Earthquakes. Quakes of all sizes can damage electrical facilities and power lines. Do we have earthquakes in Illinois?
Yes, Southern Illinois.
Here we go. I think it's going to take. Oh, I didn't get a message on that one. They usually have a little thing here. I don't know. I know I see it. Let me get that going. It should have worked before. Okay.
The U.S. Geological Survey has reported an earthquake shook the area near DeKalb, Illinois, at 4:59 a.m. on Wednesday morning. According to the government website, the magnitude was 4.3 and took place 4 miles of Virgil, Illinois, 5 miles east of Sycamore, 5 miles north of Maple Park, and 48 miles from Chicago.
So it happens. What?
I have an announcement.
Uh-oh.
As we speak on the outages, near Kankakee, pole hit by vehicle.
Wow. He's so good at this stuff. He loves that stuff. He loves it.
I don't make this stuff up.
All right, let's move on. Okay, so this is our area, and you can see it's Southern Illinois. Bobby, you said it was Southern Illinois, I believe, and that's true. And why is that? Because we have a thing called the Wabash Valley Seismic Zone and New Madrid Fault. And you can see it right there at the corner of Illinois and downstate. So she was absolutely right, and most people were right anyway, in general. Okay, here we go, power outages. Animals, those little critters, cause them all the time. Excavation, digging without prior approval from Julie 811 can cause outages. There you go, underground cables, there you go. And by the way, talk about cable TV is buried too. And I see a lot of people talking about outages on cable, and it could be that too. So now we have a twofold issue about underground cables, okay? Brownouts, under 110 volts, and take a look at this one. This is a good one. Listen.
We are having a brownout. Look at that. Even the meter's not working right. It's supposed to be 120 volts, getting 95 volts.
Lightning, which we saw at the beginning. Electrical, lightning strikes electrical equipment, power, tower, wires, poles, electrical service will be interrupted. So 8 common causes, just to repeat: storms, trees, vehicles, earthquakes, animals, lightning, excavation, and high power demand. Those brownouts. Okay, prepare now. What do? Take inventory of all your electrical needs at the beginning, like right now you would do when you get home. Let's say you do that. Know if your medications are temperature sensitive. Plan battery usage. Okay, get some batteries. Install carbon monoxide detectors. We'll talk about why. Will landline operate without power? Okay, this is the question. And when you survive during, that means it's happening, keep refrigerator closed, use food that did not require refrigeration. Be cautious of devices that produce carbon monoxide. Check your neighbors. Turn off your electrical devices and go to a shelter if necessary. When in doubt, be safe after. When in doubt, throw it out. That means after something's happened and it returns, now you got to think about what I'm going to do with the food. Just throw it out. Don't even deal with it. Check refrigerator medication if power is out more than 24 hours. Procedure to follow when it comes back. Prevent electrical damage to equipment during the return of power is important to what? Turn off your computer when it goes down. Turn off your furnace and air conditioner. Turn off your light switches. If possible, unplug the freezer, refrigerator freezer, and turn off your thermostat. There's a good reason why. And you pretty much know that. We'll talk about it, but you pretty much know that. I know you know this because when you bring it up, you'll say, yeah, I know. There's your freezer and refrigerator. There's your thermostat. And procedures for comfort when the power's not up yet. Now this is a mouthful. Summer, close shades on sunny side of the house. Don't open the refrigerator unless absolutely necessary. Stay outside in shade. Shade side of the house, stay hydrated. Can you say that twice? No. How about this one? Winter. Open shades on sunny side of the house. Windows covering closed on shade side of the house. And close doors on unused rooms and gather together. Now gathering together can be a negative. Why? Guess what she's gathering with? Candles. Why are candles bad? Because it can cause a fire. So now EMS, Tracy's out there doing the sirens, trying to figure all the sirens out there, and then you got a candle and your house is starting to burn. So what does EMS have to do? Not deal with the people with the outage, now they have to go and put out the fire. Don't gather with that. What you want to do, there's a no, and there's a no, group-wise. Use battery operated, that's what we're talking about, get battery. And there was a table over there that Frank has put together on battery operated type stuff that you'll see at the end, all the presentations. Okay, procedure for safety. What's wrong with that picture on the left? She's heating her house. Is that good? No way. It's constant combustion, so guess what the carbon monoxide detector will find? This going on. So don't use it for that, but you can use it to cook. Now, if you really are hungry and you need to cook, propane, like a little thing, and then, of course, your barbecue, if you really need to cook. Now, remember, we're doing without a generator. Have a procedure for safety. Have a plan ready before an outage. No temperature restrictions on your insulin. And power returns. Here we go. Wait a few minutes before turn on your devices. Turn on devices one at a time. That's the issue. Why is that? Because it's all going to load up the system at one time and all of a sudden crash. You know that's going to work. Wait 1 second, okay? 1 second. And then turn on your electronics last. Here we go. We have a, wow. Now, if you don't mind, Stephen's going to be doing that part with the generator. That's why we just want to show you that, how the generator. Prepare now. Know how to survive. Be safe after. And I think that is one more. And we'll check out the table display for rechargeable items. And that is the end of it. If I go here, it'll be the end. Gentleman had a question there.
Yeah. When you go to turn the power, how are you going to know if the power's back on if you don't have anything on?
There'll be something to tell you. You'll be something. You'll be something. You'll be something. See, that's what I'm saying. You guys are very smart with this stuff. You just got to remember you got to do it. That's why. Okay? Anything else? We'll have that thing at the end. Thank you very much for listening. Appreciate it. I agree. I agree. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Stephen Odette, and I'm also, like Tracy before me, representing the Village of Schaumburg Medical Reserve Corps. And today I'll be talking about some of your options with if you decide to invest in a generator or you already have a generator, kind of just a general discussion about different generators, their different types, different usages, what fuels them, and general safety tips for them. So as Mike had already shown us, this is kind of what a generator would probably sound like. Oops. Let's see if it will play. Let's try the manual option. Yeah, so pretty loud, and that's kind of a lot of typical generators would sound like, but I'll get into it more a little bit later. So first of all, like I said, what we're going to learn today is to know the different types of generators, their advantages and disadvantages, and also safety when operating them. So the different types of generators, what we have in terms, first of all, of what fuels them, you can have regular gas, propane, dual fuel, natural gas, battery or solar generated. And then we have the differences between something that is portable versus something that can actually be permanently affixed to your home. And just a little disclaimer, when it says portable, it doesn't mean it's going to be easy to pick up. In fact, you might want to have help. So for what's up here, for instance, this is a portable generator. Sure, it has a handle on it, but these things can be in excess of 50 pounds. So that's something to keep in mind of. And now we'll be talking about the difference between a generator versus an inverter and what their differences are, and I'll talk about that more later. The differences between the engines that power a generator, in this instance a 2-cycle versus a 4-cycle, and what that would entail. And the differences between a battery versus like a solar generator and how those really work, and these are kind of the new kids on the block per se when it comes to generator technology. So going back to the engine, what actually powers these? So what is a 2-cycle and what is a 4-cycle? A 2-cycle generator is one that has a separate gas can, which the lubrication oil and the gas are in it together. So which means it's actually a lot less expensive because it's easier to produce in that way. But the problem is it's extremely noisy. Think a chainsaw engine. That's a 2-cycle generator, and that's what you're really going to have with this sort of thing. And like I said, they miss the gas and oil. And the other difference is the 4-cycle generator, which has generally more choices. They typically have less of a noise problem than the 2-cycle. And because they produce less emissions, they tend to be more popular in the market when it comes to generators. The problems with the 4-cycle is that sometimes the larger units that you can buy will require a battery start for those. Now let's talk about for inverters. So inverters are generally portable and 4-cycle. So what is an inverter? Inverter is a form of generator which produces more of a clean cycle of power, which means if you have the power coming back on, it's much better for electronics use and things like that because it produces much cleaner energy than a generator where there's less differences in the cycles versus a generator. So they're also tend to be more fuel efficient. The voltage is more consistent, as I said. It is usually generally easier to maintain, and they're pretty, on the most part, more portable than a typical generator. The problems is because of these advantages, they tend to cost a little bit more, and they have a little bit less of a power output than your typical generator would. Now, portable, this one I believe is somewhere around 150, 200 pounds. Oh. Yeah, it looks, this one in particular, there's other ones that are lighter, but I believe this particular one, it's like around that range. So that's why we said portable, but not really. You need help. That's right. And then these generators are much larger units, which is generally not as portable with humans can move around as easily. But the other thing about generators, they're typically 4-cycle if you find them. Their advantages are they tend to be more cost effective in terms of the amount of dollars you pay per wattage. So going back to this, I believe you get about 2,000 watts on these particular kind of inverter for about $1,400. But on a generator of this model, you get about, say, 6,000 watts for about $2,000. So there's more cost effectiveness there in terms of that. They produce more power. There's a lot more choices on the market for a typical generator. Disadvantage is that they're a lot heavier than an inverter, which is why they tend to be more portable in that sense. And the larger units usually require an electrical start. So as for the permanent options, you can actually invest into a natural gas generator. These are nice in that you don't have to worry about upkeep yourself. Once you have them installed, they will actually put in the fuel for you, so you don't have to worry about your own fuel storage. And they have an auto start feature. This is pretty cool. If you're away from home, or in other ways just don't have any other way to power your house, you don't have to worry. It will turn on automatically. This unit right here is actually what detects if there's a power outage, and it just goes on its own. So that's a nice security to have. They produce a lot of power, so they're usually very consistent in that regard as well. So these are really great for areas where you know that storms are very prevalent and you feel like you need that extra security. But the disadvantage is they're very costly. Think $6,500 to install these. So it's a big investment, but it's worth it if you are in that situation. So let's talk about dual fuel generators. And what are these exactly? Well, dual fuel means that these actually start on liquid propane, but can actually switch to gasoline use afterward. Typically, you don't have to worry about switching to gasoline because you should have enough liquid propane, but in case you do run out, you can switch to gas, say from your car or something like that to power these. So they're more consistent in that manner. The liquid propane, another thing about liquid propane in general is that you don't have to worry about it corroding the carburetor of your generator. So like in a typical generator, if you don't make sure you're draining out all of the fuel, eventually it will sit in there over time and actually corrode the inside of it. But liquid propane, you don't have to worry about as much upkeep in that sense. The problem is with these, convenience comes at cost. So in this case, this is generally more costly than a typical gasoline-powered generator. And they typically have fewer choices in that regard as well. Tri-fuel just kind of doubles down on the whole dual fuel concept. So these have 3 different kinds of fuels that can be used. They have high flexibility in that sense as well. And they don't require any seasonal maintenance, but unfortunately, these things are a lot more costly even than dual fuel because you have to run a natural gas line to these for the tri-fuel option, and those cost like at a minimum around $1,000, plus added on to the cost of the generator itself. And from just the look of this is a very heavy unit as well, so not very portable at all. So you need a lot of help to move these around. And fewer choices again. So now let's talk about battery solar generators. These are kind of the newer generation of generators. They are mostly, in the most part, electronic, which actually produce very few emissions. So much so that I've actually found pictures online where a battery-powered generator can actually be placed by your bedside to power your CPAP machine, and you can place it right there and no emissions, don't have to worry about it, and it's very useful in that way. So these are great choice for apartments in that sense because they don't produce emissions. You can have a small area and have them in right there, and they're very low maintenance because they're mostly electronic. The problem is that they're very costly because of that. So much more than your typical field generator option or even an inverter generator. And they can also usually produce less power output as a regard as well. But a nice thing about a lot of these units is they usually come with a solar panel with them, and they can actually be charged in that manner. So you can have these things charged with the solar energy, and they can usually keep that charge for about a year. So these are really consistent and useful in that manner. Just the opportunity cost of buying this might be precluding in that sense. And you can also even wire these in parallel for better power. So normally you can't easily run things like a refrigerator with a battery-powered generator, but if you buy multiple and actually put them in parallel, then you can start running some more power-intensive devices. So now that out of the way, now that we have an understanding of all the choices of generators you can potentially invest into if you do not already, let's talk about what happens when you actually have a generator, when you start having to use it in a power outage situation. Well, in order, first of all, for the installation, you want to make sure that it's at least 15 feet away from any open windows, doors, anything where emissions could get inside your home and be trapped inside and be a potential health hazard. And make sure that you're always thinking about your neighbors too, because sometimes you can have closer quarters between different houses or apartments and so on. So always make sure you're mindful of that. You want to make sure it's operated in a dry area. So if it's raining, for instance, make sure you have an awning, something that's protecting it, making sure that equipment doesn't get wet. You want to make sure when you are installing it, you actually have a couple of options. You can connect it to your main electrical panel with the help of an electrician. You can install an improved automatic transfer system and make it easy, or you can just run extension cords through your home and have it plugged in that way. So again, as I mentioned earlier, when it comes to emissions, carbon monoxide poisoning is definitely a risk when it comes to this. So make sure it's always outdoors. Don't have it in your garage or anything like that. Those things, emissions can build up and be a hazard. But in case you ever feel sick, dizzy, or weak, just make sure that you go outside and get oxygen immediately. That's the best way to counteract carbon monoxide poisoning. And so now for general maintenance and operation, I want to make sure you plug equipment directly into the generator if you're going to do it that way. Make sure that your extension cords are outdoor rated because you're going to have the generator outside. Do not use a generator in a very wet condition in which it can be exposed to a lot of water and have safety issues in that manner. Make sure that your hands are dry if possible before using these, and maintain an adequate fuel supply if you're investing in like a gasoline powered generator or something like that. And make sure that you're always just keeping up with maintenance in terms of checking your storage tanks, checking the pipes and valves in the generators, and especially make sure that the fuel is not building up in there. Make sure you always drain it out before using it again. And make sure that you never are refueling the engine while it is running. That's a major risk. So just like your car, turn it off, then fuel it up. And so just for other general tips in summary, make sure you investigate your electrical needs depending on what generator you're thinking about using. Talk to others who have generators who might have any knowledge about this. Maybe go to your local department store and ask questions there. Always make sure you can check out your options online. There's plenty of different models you can look into. Make sure that you read your operator's manual once you invest in a generator, and always make sure that you actually practice setting up the generator before using it in an actual event. And make sure you're always just reading that safety manual, always very important. All right, so if there's anything else, at least we can look at the display table for additional printed materials and battery operated devices for more information in that regard. Thank you very much.
Well, hi. My name's Rose, and now we're going to talk about documents. What are they and why do we need them? Well, if you encounter an emergency where your home is destroyed, or your business, or your vacation cabin, well, you're going to need help. And then you're going to need to contact various agencies that can help you. And they're going to ask for documentation. So what we want to teach you today is what are the agencies that can provide you with aid, and what aid you will receive, and what information you're going to need to give them in order to get that aid. So a couple of examples might be your insurance companies, and you see a few listed here like Geico, the American Red Cross, local and state agencies, and FEMA. And we're going to go into more detail on that. The first outfit you're going to call is going to be your insurance company. And they're going to help you find temporary shelter. They will determine what amount they can give you in order to replace and rebuild your property. Red Cross self-deploys. They would provide you with medical assistance with your medications and your devices. And they can find you if you need assistance in finding shelter. And they can also provide you with money. And they can help you locate family members as well. State and local agencies basically self-deploy too. They're like your gas and electric, and they have to come out and get things put back in again and together. And in other words, they're going to rebuild your infrastructure for you. Or if you have downed trees and other things that sidewalks, things that have to be repaired like that. FEMA is another agency. However, FEMA only will come out if the governor of a state determines that you are in a disaster zone. And then they will provide a way for you to be able to get loans to rebuild or take care of your damaged property. The person that's going to say a few more words about that would be Frank Mucci, and he's here with us this evening, as you know. And he's had extensive experience in having to process FEMA loans. So we'll hear from him a little bit later on. So again, the agencies requiring documentation are going to be your insurance companies, Red Cross, local and state, and then FEMA. So they're going to require that you provide them with information about yourself and about your property and what your needs are. One thing I want to mention about getting your documents together is that when you encounter an emergency, it's not unusual to panic. But if you can get all your documents together, that would help ease and reduce some of the panic and stress on you. So what you want to be able to do is identify yourself, list your property, and demonstrate your personal needs. So what type of paperwork are you going to need after an emergency? Well, let's take a look at some. But before we do that, just a little disclaimer. We don't know why various agencies always require various documents, but we can help you get to which type of documents you're going to need. So to go through some of them, you should have your driver's license, your state ID, your Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid cards, credit and debit cards. A lot of you keep those in your wallets anyway. Good idea to always take copies of them. Your COVID card is another one. Birth certificate, passports, immigration papers, green cards, state licenses, maybe you're in a practice of some type, your diplomas, proving that you work in that particular field. And we can look at the assets and financial documents that you need. Your mortgage information, deed to the house or other property. You might have a business or you might have a vacation cabin, so you need to have all the documents and paperwork to that. Also, you want to be able to prove that you have insurance for your home and your other property as well. Your tax records, tax returns, and so forth. Bank statements, keep copies of those, your investment accounts, your wills. Insurance companies, verify the coverage that you have. And by the way, you might want to always review your property insurance every year because things can change. And also it validates proof of ownership. Other types of information that you would want to have copies of as well: phone numbers of your doctors and other medical providers, your insurance companies, phone numbers of your agents, your family members, your practitioner's orders for life-sustaining treatment, power of attorney, home inventory list and photos, and an appraisal, if you can, for all your valuables. So again, you should always have a list of your emergency contacts, your medications, and your list of special medical needs. Maybe you need an oxygen equipment, or maybe you need a wheelchair, things of that nature. As far as your insurance policies, we've covered that. You want to have a copy of your plot of survey. And why is that important? Because if say your home is completely wiped off the grounds, maybe FEMA comes in and says, well, we have to figure out where your property is at, because it's just the whole neighborhood's been destroyed, and they have to know where your home was located, or your business, or your vacation cabin. I believe if you go through, the assessor's office, you can get information on where to get a copy of the plot survey. Well, we like to say that when it comes to aid from different agencies, more is better, because you never know what agencies are going to ask you for. After you collect all of these documents, all of this paperwork, take copies of everything. Not just one set, take about 2 and 3 sets of copies. And when you get all of that, you're going to want to organize it and put it into a file, something like this, a storage device of this type. And there's different kinds. But you don't have to try and worry about remembering all these things, because we're going to have information for you. If you look in your red folder, there is a kit. I call it a work book. And if you don't have it, it looks like this. If you don't have this one, and we ran short at some point, if you don't have it, you'll be able to order it from FEMA, and I put the catalog number and order number on this little sheet of paper, and I will put it on that table there so that you can write it down. But it is a workbook that allows you to go in and go through all the different things that you're going to need. And it will really help you out, get you all organized. And then when you do that, you want to go in to the website and look for storage cases. Go on Amazon, you can find those anywhere. Put all of that in there. You can give a set of copies to your, okay, you can give us, oh, we do have extras. Oh, great. Thank you, Tracy. Oh, thanks, yeah. Great, okay. Okay, so you're going to protect your documents by placing them into your storage cases. But at the same time, make sure to make copies of all your documents. What you want to do is give copy sets to a family member and somebody that was not in your disaster zone. You know, if they're in the area where you had the disaster, well, don't give them a set. Give them to a family member outside the area. Okay, here it is. This is Here's the workbook in case you don't have it, but now that you all have it, it's the Emergency Financial First Aid Kit. And again, as I said, get copies of everything, get storage cases for it, but make copies to give to your family member and maybe a close acquaintance that you trust to have that information. So now, okay, we're going to have a question and answer period by Frank. And he's going to tell you more about FEMA.
So this organizes everything. Most of all the printed material that you received tonight, almost all of it, came from FEMA, the federal government, all free of charge. That book by itself probably is $2 or $3. Inside your bag, and you'll get these on your way out, you will have a bunch of what we call them catalog sheets or cut sheets. They'll either be separate or bound together like a notebook pad of a bunch of information on how to stay safe for different situations, starting with active shooter. Now, the reason I put active shooter in there is because the kits that were already pre-made, they were in alphabetical order. Active shooter was on the front, and last weekend there were 126 shootings in the city, so I'm going, let's put that in there. Yeah. So, and then it just goes through earthquake, tornadoes, silly things like tsunami. Well, we're not going to have a tsunami here, but maybe when you go to Hawaii, you might, so there's something there to learn. The next really cool thing is one of my favorites. It's a little book. It's all tabbed, and like we talked about, what do you do during a tornado? What do you do during an ice storm? What do you do during a tsunami? So this is a little flip chart in there, and it says if you're in your home, and then if you're in your car. And it has a little magnet on the back. So you can put that on your favorite spot, the refrigerator. And then there is, get in here. Your emergency communication plan for your family. You know, I've been teaching this like for 10 years. Did we make ours yet? I'm just saying. I mean, I'm honest. I'm going to be honest with you. I'm going to be honest with you. We're going to do this when we have nothing to do, I don't know when, soon. And then, but you know, in all seriousness, talk about how you're going to do that. We have some things in place, but not formal. And then there's some things here from, helping children cope with disaster. Your own kids, your grandkids, or their neighbors. And there's some Band-Aids in there. And our sponsors, FEMA, ComEd was very generous with what we have here. Any questions? Because I can talk forever and ever, but any questions? Don't use candles. Get rechargeable stuff. Okay, this is affordable. This is only a little bit of what I have, but you know, I have a lot of stupid things, so that's stuff I use. Any thoughts? If you want to talk about FEMA, catch me later.
Okay. I want to thank you guys.
I might as well just give you that one now.